So I'd like to introduce myself. So to my immediate left is Mark Lord, who's Business Development Manager with the Ontario Centres of Excellence. Of course, he will introduce our esteemed panel, but I'd like to introduce our moderator as well. I've known Martin for several years. He's one of the most networked people I know, and when he has a vision, he follows through like you wouldn't believe. I'm just going to share a quick story. When I first met Martin, I think it was in 2011, he reached out to me saying, you know what, we should do something for 3D gaming, and we didn't quite know what, and over lunch we realized that there was a need to do stereoscopic 3D gaming research because it hadn't existed. There was a definite need amongst game developers and content creators. And, you know, through his contacts and his resources, you know, this much needed research was made possible with over $630,000 of cash and in kind, partly through networks and sponsors and industry money. And she's just such a resourceful person that looks at a problem to help solve it. And it's an honor to have known him all these years. And of course, a lot of people in this industry know Martin personally, so it was an obvious choice to be a moderator for our Industry Builders panel. So I'd really like everyone to give a round of applause.
Thank you, Neil. Too generous. Just wanted to give you a quick spiel on the Ontario Centres of Excellence. So we're a not-for-profit, quasi-government agency of the Ontario government. So we're dependent on the Ministry of Research and Innovation. And basically, we are a funder, so we invest in various opportunities. We have kind of three main pillars. One is industry-academic collaboration. The second one is talent development. And the third one is related to entrepreneurial development in the province, taking intellectual property from academic institutions, from researchers, and bringing it to the market, as well as helping the young entrepreneurs who hopefully will get great companies tomorrow. Over the years, we've supported a number of companies directly into this sector or into the media and technology sector. For instance, we've got three companies here that are exhibitors. Deep, Awe, and Bubble are companies we supported. We've got a number of others such as Cinema Suite, Mars, Art Productions, Silent IP, Side Effect Software, STM Graphics, and even the likes of Chrissy Digital. You could go back even years ago to Alias Webfronts, which of course has been acquired by Autodesk later on. So without, and of course, sorry, on the academic institution side, so we've been working with the likes of OCADU, University of Waterloo, University of Toronto, Ryerson, Seneca, and more. Without further ado, I will introduce you, our panelists, but I will really get started rather on a person per person. We'll give them about 5 minutes to describe what it is that they're doing and to introduce the subject. So we'll start with Anna Serrano, who's the Chief Digital Officer of CDC Lab, founder of the Canadian Film Centre. So Anna is driving a digital transformation of the CFC into a unique blend of talent, product, and company accelerator and creative production house. Most recently, she launched Canada's first digital entertainment accelerator, Idea Boost, with founding partners Shaw Media, Chorus Entertainment, and Google. To date, Serrano has directed the development of over 130 digital media projects, mentored over 50 startups, and has received numerous awards from the digital media, film, and theater industries in both Canada and the US, including a DG Award for Visionary of the Year, the Best Canadian Feature Film Award from the International Real Asian Film Festival for our own transmedia production, prizing the Prison Dancer, the musical, and the Jim Blackaby member of the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences, which presents the Webbies and frequently speaks at digital media and film festivals around the world about the creation and business of digital entertainment. Anna, could you please give us an introduction of what you do specifically at CUC? And in particular, I think you're pretty successful Idea Boost and how it helps this community.
Sure. So first off, I did not found the Canadian Film Center. I think normally Jews would get mad if that got around. But I did found the Media Lab part of the Canadian Film Center in its early days, where it was a skunk works for many interactive storytelling projects for many, many years. But for today, I think there are two things that we do at the Film Center that will be pertinent to this group. The first one is Idea Boost, which is Canada's first digital entertainment accelerator. We're really focused on accelerating two kinds of companies. The first kind of company are enabling technology companies that are disrupting in the entertainment sector in some fashion or solving a problem that has been broken through other technological disruption, etc. And what's interesting right now is we seem to be focused on sort of two core subgroups in digital entertainment. The first one are hardware, software solutions that are likely going to be part of the VR production workflow and or any kind of real-time workflow. And the other types of companies that we're really focused on are sort of the kinds of engines and platforms around notions of discovery, monetization, audience engagement, and UGC storytelling, especially if it's real time. So the kinds of companies that belong in those two groups include things like the Bubble Can, which is actually in the exhibition floor right now. This is the first full hemispherical 360-degree camera. This means that there's no blinds, there's no holes at the top or the bottom, so that it could potentially be a really nice solution for UGC 2D flat video 360 images that will be ported over to Oculus. So imagine, I think it was Ian Hunter who spoke a lot about the fact that there's something to be said about just capturing live event experiences and being able to share 360 experiences on the head-mounted displays. So we think that Bubble has the ability to do that, especially as they move into version 2. And we're just in the process of raising their seed financing right now. All the way to a company like Stage 10, which is in part of our current cohort, which is sort of reimagining the live control room of broadcast television as a web-based and cloud-based solution. So, so those are the kinds of companies we're really focused on. And then the other part are content companies. And in this manner, which again, some of you may be working on, are any content companies that are actually developing multi-platform IP franchises, which could include VR expressions, etc. But we're really looking for those companies who are interested in developing these large-scale franchises, and we're happy to help them accelerate their companies to be more profitable. So that's the kind of business acceleration stuff that we do. But we also do internal productions. And our internal productions are really meant to be R&D experimental production labs that allow us to actually be able to then mentor better, because we actually make this stuff ourselves. So starting last year, we really started to migrate a lot of our productions within the AR/VR continuum. So we started developing Google Glass applications. We've developed an Oculus Rift experience. Again, all of this stuff is in the exhibition floor. And we're looking at increasing our output in that area and starting sort of an AR/VR lab. Sorry,
All right.
that wasn't too long.
No, thank you. Right on. That's a good introduction. We'll have a chance to discuss in a few more details after we do the introduction part. Next, Mauricio Ospina, who's the area director for the ICT sector in the USA market, international trade branch at the Government of Ontario's Ministry of Citizenship, Immigration and International Trade. You've been very modest here, Mauricio. You didn't give us much of information about your own background, but basically we'll let you then discuss. So I understand you have been personally involved in a number of trade missions. Perhaps it'd be good to describe to the crowd here what is a trade mission, what's in it for them ultimately, and also your experience perhaps dealing with specific trade missions of interest in groups such as SIGGRAPH.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, we are the organization in charge of helping Ontario-based companies export. In the US, we have 4 consultants focused on specific sectors. I cover the technology sector, but we also cover aerospace, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and anything related to green technologies. Outside of the US, we have consultants covering geographic areas with a focus on those key sectors that I mentioned. And so we do 4 things that we'll get back to the third mission. Most people don't quite grasp the meaning of it. We do 4 things. One, we provide consulting to companies that want to export, whether it's tax issues, immigration issues, shipping the goods back and forth, getting the right kind of documentations, and so on. 2, we bring buyers from key markets around the world to meet with qualified value suppliers and startups, everything from small companies to larger companies. 3, we have a funding program implemented in conjunction with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce that gives up to $40,000 year 1, $40,000 year 2 to hire an export manager, and also a program that gives up to $50,000 grant that companies can use for their export development activities, whether it's going to Japan or the US, printing brochures, translations, hotel, accommodation, and so on. They get it, they don't pay it back. The 4th thing we do is trade missions, and we probably have a trade mission with Premier Wynne or Prime Minister Harper. Yes, we do those, but we do more than those. We organize over 60 outbound trade missions every year to key markets around the world. My last one was taking 20 wireless companies to the US, CTIA. My next one will be taking 8 companies in the education, that have software for the educational industry, and a trade mission typically, and actually Babo Technology and all company and BART and Signal, they have participated in the program, they're coming back. So I'll refer to the one that I did at Signal. I led a delegation of companies to Signal. We have the Ontario Pavilion, full-fledged. Companies don't need anything, we give them everything. All they need is a laptop and business cards. They get everything else from us, from signage to internet, storage, a place for meetings. We also organized a VIP breakfast attended by about 30 Vancouver high-level executives and also international executives coming as far as Japan to meet that companies at the breakfast. We also organize, and I always do organize a reception in our pavilion. Our pavilion is not that large, but nevertheless it gets about 400 people to come to the reception and meet with the companies. And of course, scan every one of the companies get that database. Finally, we give them a database of local companies in the region in which we are trying to do business, full-fledged database that they can use for their own purposes. And finally, I asked the company what issues do you have when exporting, and we answer all those questions, either myself or I get an expert in those all the answers.
Very well, thank you. Next is Mark Lawrence, who is a director at the Network of Angel Organizations of Ontario. Pretty detailed description here. I'll try to take the summary of it. Mr. Lawrence has been managing partner of Northwest Partners Inc., an exempt market dealer since September 2003. He's also president of CML Capital Ventures Inc., serving in that role since June 1997. He's definitely the money man, so we want definitely to ask him a number of questions. But to summarize the rest here, Mr. Lawrence has also since mid-2012 been a member of the Financial Assistance Committee of the NAO Ontario. Mark, could you tell us what it is that NAO does and how perhaps you could maybe assist these folks here?
Sure. The Network of Angel Organizations, its purpose is to help promote interaction between angel investors in Ontario and to help syndicate transactions outside of the province. Let's step back what angel investors are. Angel investors are accredited investors. Typically, angel investors have already cashed out of a company they've sold. They have some money, they have some time in their hands in order to give back some of their knowledge into companies. So the angel investor community in Ontario has been organized formally through the NAO since 2007. We now have about 900 registered angel investors amongst 26 groups around the province. All of those are in not-for-profit organizations, 14 are in clubs and other areas such as the Kudzu Club and Morris Discovery District. We've had tremendous success in investing and helping small companies. We have done over 380 rounds of investment amongst our registered members of the angel organization. Directly, those investors have invested $135 million. And if you follow that up with all the follow-on investors, subsequent, some $435 million have been invested into entrepreneurial companies such as yours here in this room. We have a strong focus within the ICT sector. Over 75% of our investments are in that area. The others are in life sciences and some manufacturing. The NAO is in itself a not-for-profit organization. We're funded partially by the Ontario government and the federal government. Our role is to help set up these organizations, these groups, help them hire an executive director, help them develop standards of due diligence, help them syndicate deals across different groups so that you as an entrepreneur can go through one angel group, go through the selection committee, and perhaps be pre-qualified to present to 4 or 5 other angel groups across the province. We don't invest in companies directly, so we help do the infrastructure and the marketing and coordination with the groups, and we help give the tools to those angel investors to do a better job. So what we're trying to do is professionalize this whole asset class of angel investors. We've heard lots about VCs, and they've got lots of publicity and conferences and stuff, and we try to really professionalize it so that you as an entrepreneur have less frustration when you approach it. And so some of our angel groups have specialties in different areas. One of the roles we provide is you come to us and we'll try to direct you to the particular area. As I mentioned earlier, these angels like to mentor a company. So many times it's simply not just writing a check to you guys. It's they only get involved if they think they can help you out down the road. And these have tremendous networks and information, and I really encourage you to consider that. And so if you have any further questions afterwards, we can discuss it. But that's it.
Very well, thank you. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Shelley Colfish, who's the Deputy Director at the Canada Media Fund Program, and the Canada Media Fund Program Administrator at Telefilm Canada. Equally modest, Shelley, I will let you introduce yourself and tell us what CMF does and what can we do here to help this community. The video? Right. Okay.
Telephone Canada, we did this big fund for them. Canada Media Fund was established in 2010 to administer financing to television programs, their related digital media projects, and then digital media projects on their own. The fund that would be most relevant to this audience would be the CMF Experimental Fund. The Experimental Fund has approximately, this year, it is $39 million geared towards financing interactive, innovative, and projects related to the Canadian cultural sector. Key word is innovation, looking for innovative projects, either by technology or content. We fund in 3 stages: development, production, and marketing. You do not have to come to us for all of them, but you can. Up to per project cap of $1 million. We will generally fund approximately 75% of your budget. We fund on a project basis, not the company. So when you apply to us with each project, if you want to apply to us on a per project basis. And the funds come in either repayable loans or reciprocal investments, depending on your state that some of us for. We get approximately triple the amount of requests that we're able to fund per year, so it's quite an oversubscribed fund. If you want to see examples of the things that we have funded over the past 4 years, you can go to CanadaOnScreen.ca. We have several case studies that you can look at. It's broken down into television programming, apps, and software, and games. So that's a great place to look and see the sort of things that we fund. We also, if you are ever questioning whether your project is eligible for us, we do free consultations. You can call Telephone Canada and ask to talk to somebody who works on the experimental fund, and we'd be happy to talk about your project and do an assessment of whether it would be eligible for the fund.
Very well, thank you. So that will serve as an introduction to our panelists and their activities, their companies. I'd like now to open up a bit more of the questions or the debate, and later on I'll have you also, if you have any questions, to ask our panelists. But first, I'd like to start a discussion, and perhaps the first thing to start on would be, do you see a need, given the community we're developing here, so mediated realities, texture, or let's say human-machine interface, computer-machine interaction, and 3D and all of that. So do you see any particular characteristics of this sector or any reason for which it should be treated differently, or is it business as usual? Is it a tradition in the same way as a traditional media, however we may call that today? Or do you see anything special here that needs to be treated differently?
Yes, sure. I think from the angel investor community, it's a relatively new sector for a lot of the angels. We haven't had a lot of PR investments coming towards us, and we've seen over 10,000, I think, in the past few years. So I think it'll be a little bit of education. When you approach the angel groups, usually you go through a selection committee. So it's good to try to get a champion amongst the angel groups to find out, and try to educate that person about the sector. And then they can go and educate the other guys so they get more comfort if they don't know exactly what it is. Some investors only invest in their own geographic area, but some of the people like to syndicate and look at deals across the province. So I think we have to consider the education aspect.
I think sorry.
Yes,
I think one of the things that's starting to happen, and we certainly saw this through our accelerator, is that the industry will need to, especially actually funds like the Canadian Fund perhaps, will start to need to relate to hardware. You know, hardware is software, etc. So the Internet of Things, as system integration becomes a key component of most people's IT strategies. Even within VR, if you're creating things that will have relationships with other types of wearables. So, you know, the Muse headband, for example, is an interesting example of one of these new wearables that if you start to integrate that to a head-mounted display and also another kind of quantified self-device to create something wholly new, well then what does that look like? Is that a media play? Or is that a hardware play? So what we found within the Canadian Film Center, because that's where the Idealist Accelerator lives. So that's a Canadian Film Center. About a good third of the companies that we're supporting are actual hardware companies. So what does that mean within an ecosystem of support in Canada, which is typically supported media type plays? I think that's a big challenge.
So that's a good thing to point out as far as Canada Media Center goes, is we're looking for innovation, technology, and content. We don't, however, fund hardware at the moment, so that's tricky. We will fund the software side. It might be that the hardware part of the project is the innovative part, though. So we do look at that, though, when you send in your proposal. Unfortunately, at the moment, because our budget is so small, we can only fund the software portion of the project.
But that could actually be another one of those myths, which is and this is something that we've thought about, which, we've been counseled to stay away from hardware because it is so difficult traditionally. But again, as we're moving into a much more Internet of Things focused environment, where manufacturing is actually getting a lot cheaper with 3D printed technologies, et cetera, some of the barriers around investing in hardware may be dropping. So again, getting ahead of that curve is going to be important. What do you think, Mark? Are you feeling the same thing?
Yeah, I think traditionally the angel investors have gone more towards the software side to feel more comfortable. They've been scared off on the hardware side. So I think this is where it's important when you go and speak to the angel community, you explain where it fits in and try to get the big broad picture. Because most every angel investor will have a preconceived notion of where you fit into the spectrum, which may be totally wrong for what you're trying to do. So I think you really have to start with a big picture, say this, this, and this. You've probably heard of these players and these players, and this is why we're here, because the costs are down and get down. And they're very receptive to it. I mean, they will be receptive, but you can't hit them over the head right with the back first. You have to get them comfortable. And that includes the whole transition. I mean, I'm talking angel investors, but when you go to the VCs and you go to the institutional investors, the angel community is trying to make sure that there's a whole linear relationship to investors, because if you get investors here, they're going to see an exit valuation to come in here, get the next $2 million, and then the next guy's coming for $5 million. So you have to have a sense of where the market is and what your value proposition is in the hardware and software to get everybody comfortable.
All right. If you wanted to give advice to the folks here on how best to get your programs, or a few tips on what people you're looking for specifically, perhaps one by one, and maybe you could also touch on what's in the store for 2015. Maybe Shelley, if you could start telling us how do you get into CMF?
Absolutely. So basically, the best way to start is to actually phone us, telephone. I don't know whether you're all here from Toronto, but we have offices across the country in Vancouver, Halifax, Montreal, Toronto. And call us and do what we call a pre-consultation, where we can talk about your project and whether it's eligible, which stage it fits into fast development, production, and marketing, and just in general about the application process. Since we are a Crown Corporation, it's a bit of a bureaucratic process. There are certain forms you need to fill out and processes that you have to follow. So it's good to have that knowledge up front so that your application process can go smoothly. Also, just so you're aware, it's a jury-based process, and we post the bios of the jurors that we hire. We hire international jurors, and they're on the CMF website, so you can see the sort of people who are looking at projects. Basically, I would recommend definitely call us first and have a chat with one of us about the process. Also, just in terms of going forward in 2015, the CMF has been conducting industry consultations to sort of see where the industry would like us to take the fund, and if there's any sort of different directions that they would like to go in. And the CMF is going to assess, all the feedback that they've received, if there's any tweaks that they might make to the programs.
Sure. I've talked about Ontario, but we are part of a national ecosystem. There's an umbrella organization called NATO, National Angel Capital Organization. We can put you in touch with those folks, and they have connections in all the other provinces. There's active angel fund in BC, Alberta, Red Cross. Orange, Quebec is very active, and they have a bit of a co-investment fund to look at. And so we can put you in touch with that. One of the things I also suggest is when you come to us, have some sense of what your valuation is. Just in your head as you go through these steps. The average angel investment pre-money is about $1.5 million. But we see things coming from $250,000 out to $10 million of pre-money valuation. We do have a very interesting worksheet, which I'm not presenting a link to, which sort of starts at $1.5 million value and has maybe 20 different criteria that you can self-rank yourself on, management, where is it from 1 to 5, and you can weight these different things, and then you sort of come up with an adjustment to the $1.5 million. So it might come up to $1 million, or it might come up to $3 million. But it's a good exercise for you to go through to figure out how ready you are for that. And if you're not ready for it, then you can talk to some of these angels, and they'll help you just mentor you for 6 months until you are ready.
Is there any sector-specific, sector-specific group that these folks here should be?
Yeah, we can definitely put you in touch. We have sort of expertise amongst the groups in Ontario. We have great ones in Waterloo, Burlington, Hamilton, St. Catharines, Red Cross, very active in Northern Ontario as well. So we can put you in touch once we understand where you're going with 2 or 3 groups that we think will understand your story the best.
And from an export perspective, one piece of advice we give you, and it's not my thinking, but it's the companies that I work with, and these are the startups, all the way to established companies like Design or Fixed. Just like it's persistence and focus. So you think that the companies can export from the internet. Sure, they can do the small deals like that, but if they want to do the real deals, the Americans want to see you eye to eye, face to face, and you have to be in the market in order to make those accidental relationships. So exporting takes time. It also takes persistence, and it takes a little bit of money. Companies that export have higher valuation than dollars. You asked about what's new in the store. Next year, I will be going for the first time to Money 2020. There have been 12 companies that have in-tech solutions, software for the financial industry. I will also be taking probably 10 companies in the augmented reality or serious games type of industry. I did that program 3 years in a row and stopped it. Next year we'll be doing that. And also in 2016, and this is January 2016, I will be going to CES. This is the first time Canada, all the time we're going to CES, Consumer Electronics Show, with our big pavilion with all the value-added activities that I mentioned. And as usual, in the US, I'll be taking companies to CPIA, about 20 or 30 companies, and then some talent, and a few other trade missions around the city. One thing I didn't mention last time, the cost of these trade missions is minuscule. When you go to a trade show, a serious trade show, and you want to do this, and you will spend $10,000. With us, and that's all you get, 10 by 10 in a corner, and nobody will share. With us, and some of you who have been with me on these programs, you are prime in the prime area, and you get many other value activities from very small programs.
So Anna, how do you get into Ideal Blues and what's the deal?
So we have 2 cohorts per year, and actually Leonardo Delano is in the room somewhere. He's the guy wearing Google Glass. He's our talent recruitment guy, and so you can just talk to him today. All the information is on idealblues.ca. But I actually want to talk about something we don't talk about, which I'll share with you people. Which is that we as I mentioned earlier, we do these internal productions, And they have different names internally. Sometimes we call them production labs, sometimes we call them just R&D kind of thing, et cetera. And essentially, these are opportunistic moments at the CFC Media Lab where sometimes we might end up meeting platform creators or technology creators, and they can be from anywhere around the world. And it just hits the sweet spot that we're interested in doing some R&D work or experimental productions in. And so we might end up partnering with you guys and actually helping develop a variety of content plays using the platform or piece of technology that you guys might have. So, for example, I mentioned the Google Glass production lab that we did, which Smoke Bomb Entertainment was a part of. There's a guy who has Smoke Bomb, and that particular lab that we did was predicated on a relationship we created with a Silicon Valley startup called MindPilot, which was creating an authoring platform to help developers create wearable applications easily across a variety of wearable devices, from smart glass to smart watches. And so we very quickly created a small and simple lab with them where we would take 6 different content companies, also from Canada and US. Some of them are gaming companies, some of them are health tech or companies that create health media, etc. And then we would put them through a process of developing applications with glass using the MindPilot software. So that was extremely successful. The launch was in San Francisco. So we constantly look for those kinds of opportunities too. And obviously, we're starting to do that with Oculus, although we don't have a formal relationship with them. But if there are certain platform providers in the room who have interesting solutions around VR workflow that we think we'd love to get tested among high-end artistic content creators, that's something that we'd be happy to talk to you guys about here as well.
Very well.
Just one other thing, talking about the input function for angel investors. We work very closely with the regional innovation centers across the province of Ontario. And so a lot of these regional innovation centers called RICs actually do the due diligence and sourcing of our transactions for our angel group. But they also work with the entrepreneurs, sometimes for 6 months or a year, to create their business plan, to help you get them advisors. And they assign someone to be your mentor before you become an innovation group. So I encourage you to look at some of those that may be located close to you, because they've been an excellent source of good product.
I have one quick thing to add as well, behind me. We have, in general, you have to be Canadian controlled and owned in order to apply for CNF. We have recently announced an international digital framework where you can have a partnership with another country, and we have a few special incentive funds for that as well. So if you are working with another country, it is possible to get CNF money. We also have a special fund that we just launched about 2 weeks ago called the Canada New Zealand Fund. It's specifically for digital media projects. And I would encourage you to go to CNF website if you have a partnership with anyone in New Zealand, take a look at that and see whether it would be relevant to you. But we do have incentive funds to work with other countries, and since there's no formal treaty for digital media, it's any country in the world.
Well, maybe before we go for Q&A from the audience, maybe a last point here. Do you see, there's kind of a question that includes various items. Do you see increased investments in this sector? What sources of funds we need, specifically Mark, you were mentioning earlier, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, everyone is looking at this, that seems to be an easy target. What's in it for the companies? And is it the right time for this industry? Because as a gentleman here, Bernie was saying yesterday, it comes in waves, and 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was new, and then we're kind of back here to the cusp. What's your view?
Sure. Crowdfunding is to achieve a lot of attention worldwide, and it's been primarily donation-based or reward-based. And in Ontario, the Securities Commission has presented a proposal for dedicated equity crowdfunding portals, where under their scenarios, you can raise up to $1.5 million a year from 600 investors or $2,500 per person. And these are from individuals in the general public, not the accredited high. And so we're waiting, we've responded to questions from the OSC. We expect in the early part of the spring for them to come up with their initial proposal they'd like to take it. I might point out though that you can actually crowdfund on the internet right now through an exempt market dealer. You can actually go to, there's some 600 exempt market dealers across Canada, lots of Ontario, where they can actually sell shares over the internet through the portal right now. And that's through accredited investors or in some of the other provinces through offering memorandum. So the jury's still out as to how the crowdfunding for equity will roll out in Canada. Are there going to be enough portals to satisfy needs? But we think it's going to be an important element, perhaps a hybrid of tracking from the masses and also from the high-net-worth individuals, so that you as a company, you provide your due diligence information to one portal and can then solicit investments from both segments of the marketplace.
Anyone would like to add to this? No, we're done. So Q&A from the audience. Anyone with questions? We have a microphone.
I'll just yell it out. It's a question from Mauricio. I was just curious about exports, whether it covers service companies as well as manufacturing companies or companies without a product in particular. So if you're working with marketing or leading, that's not going to be at all.
Yes, we do. Any product or service that has a value added and is developing a value, we work with those companies. But we cannot help every single company or every single product. Just in technology, there are over 1,000 tech companies in Ontario, 10,000 in Toronto. It would be inconceivable to think that we can help everyone. But we do look at everyone, and if we don't this year, then we listen to the industry. We say, the industry wants us to go to this part of the world, then we go on the program. If there is enough industry, I'd love to follow up.
Do you have a sweet spot in terms of the size of companies or types?
No, I'll give you an example. So, art productions. Who knows art productions? 400 people, one of the largest art production companies in Canada. A desire to learn, 3,000 companies, offices here in Toronto. Those are the type of clients that I work with. Also, I work with companies like all company, it's even in India, or Babo Technology, a small company growing, it's even in India. I also work with the startups. So, everything in between, the companies that are seriously interested in exporting and that have really are planning to devote human and financial resources.
Thank you. I have a question here from.
Yes, I was wondering, Mark, you mentioned the evaluation sheet, which is a great tool. Provide for all your organizations, provide resources for entrepreneurs so that they can better prepare to approach events.
Absolutely. I encourage you to look at both the NAO's website. There's a lot of good material there. There's also some good material on the NACO site, NASCO.com, and also Mars Discovery District has a lot of very good resources there. And if you can't really find what you're looking for, just give our office staff a call. We have 300 employees that are more than welcome to talk about it. But we are trying to create a good database.
So in terms of idea boost, I mean, how many of you guys are actually in accelerators right now? Okay, that's fine. So essentially, like the accelerator process is really where you could get a lot of that support from, and they're different. They're not all the same. So for us, we're the only digital entertainment accelerator in Canada. So if you're in that space, then you should consider looking at any of this. But essentially, what you get is support to help develop your technology roadmap, your strategy, your financial modeling, your market, your business model, and depending on, we tend to, for this cohort, a lot of the companies that we're supporting are a little bit later in the early stage side of things. So they have an MVP, a minimum viable product that's been, that may have only one customer, so they have some knowledge about how their product is being experienced in the market, or in that single market at least. So there's a lot you can actually do to help entrepreneurs package themselves to be investor ready. And that's really the purpose of these accelerators. And as I said, because we're in the digital entertainment space, most of the advisors and mentors that we work with are deeply embedded in entertainment and entertainment tech.
I was just going to add that in addition to free consultations, if you are successful with the CMF, we have 2 other programs that you can be recommended for, or asked to be recommended for. We have an accelerator program where we can actually partner you with an accelerator. We have a list of accelerators that we partner with. And also we have a relationship with the business, the bank, Business Development Bank of Canada. We have the technology of the program, of the project is data. We can partner with them for their investment.
Yeah, Michelle. Hi, my name is Rodrigo. I'm from Pentagram Studios. I'm in the middle of a process to funding a film, virtual reality film. So we'd like to be, what is it like an average time in order to, submit the project, to evaluate it, and to get the response?
Sure. So basically, we have 4 deadlines a year. 2 of them are for production, and 2 of them are for development and marketing. Generally, April, May, and September, and October. And it takes approximately 8 weeks to get the decisions in. So, for example, if you came for production in April, you'd be looking at the decision by June. And then you'd be looking at approximately another 30 business days to get your contract and your money. Yes, basically.
I think I have a question. Oh, sure. So 2 questions, and forgive me if it's been touched on already. So the first question is for Mark. Is it strategically important for a startup to do a Kickstarter or crowdfunding before they approach angel investors? Is it a credibility tool they could use to negotiate for proof of concept? And then the second question I have is for the panel. Is a lot of programs have matched. You put X dollars in, and the government will match it. Should entrepreneurs be putting thought into using crowdfunding resources to raise that capital so that they qualify for a number of programs? So, Mark, I'll let you go first.
Sure. There's pros and cons of using the equity. There's 2 types of the crowdfunding you mentioned, the Kickstarter program. I think sometimes there have been some very successful raises in that sense. Angel investors, if someone's scared to have 600 co-investors coming in with them, so then trying to do a shareholder agreement and sign on something is a scary process with 600 new shareholders. So from equity crowdfunding, people are coming into one company, an LP, and then they represent 600 shareholders. From the Kickstarter rewards program, if you can get proof of concept, I think that helps you immensely. So I think that's positive, but I would still discuss that with the angel mentor and say, this is what I want to do, is this the best bet? Some guys would just prefer to fund it directly and be your assistant, and then they get proof of concept.
On the second question, on the panel, from an export perspective, you don't really, as long as it's your money, whether it's a gift or not. You have to travel to some people with me, you have to pay for your hotel and accommodation and so on. It's your money. You pay to us a fraction of the actual cost of the program, but the companies have to pay for the transportation. Whether they're going with us to one of the congress in Spain, or Futurecom in Brazil, or CES in France. For CMF,
We've seen Kickstarter financing before. Essentially, when you're applying to us, if you've already got it, like the proof that you have it. Usually what we see though is, because we fund up to 75% of the budget, it's the other 25%. The producer will generally put that in as pending, and then if they find out that they get enough, they may go off to Kickstarter to try and find the rest. We're generally okay with that as long as by doing so you're able to abide by our recruitment policy. It will be fine.
I would say that I would be wary of Kickstarter unless you have a solid strategy on how to do it properly. So, especially, fulfillment is hard. And there's been too many examples of Kickstarters where the product fulfillment side of things have taken too long, and there's no way to manage the expectations of your buyers, or you're not paying attention to managing the expectations of your buyers because you're so busy running your startup. So you have to be very careful about just doing a Kickstarter thinking that it's an easy way to raise money and validate your product, and then you'll then command more investment. Because it's a very specific kind of strategy that requires thought and some serious execution or a bit of ability within it. And so there's a bit of a disconnect, I think, in terms of what most startups that we've met think of Kickstarter and what the realities of it are.
Any one last question? Please.
I understand. Mark, angel investors aren't doing this really fractions. What kind of equity participation are they expecting? Is there a range? Can you characterize what the differences are between angel investing and venture capital?
Angel investors are becoming more venture capital-like in the sense that they're trying to negotiate a better term sheet so they have a better chance of getting an exit, because right now there's a big problem with lots of private deals and no exit, so all the money's tied up. So we've got to get some of that money out, and so they're going to be a little bit more cautious on how they sign up the deal. The typical, I would say, the average angel investment deal is a $1.5 million fee money, and typically angels might put in $500,000 and take 25% of the company at that stage. As you get higher in money, then obviously it's some different expectations on valuation, how much they're willing to put in. We've had deals lately which have been funded $1 to $2 million by angels. That tends to be on the high side of $2 million, but deals with $1 million to $1.5 million of actual funding from angel groups between maybe 2 or 3 across the provinces. They are looking for money. I would say typically those angels are still looking for a 10 times return on what they're looking for, because not all of them will succeed. The same stats as the VC community, in fact, it's far more risky. So they want to see some of that. They're not just looking for 2 times return.
Well, very well. Thank you very much to our panelists here. Please,